Discover the incredible moment a soldier and his K9 saved a little girl abandoned in a sack. Jake trudged through the desolate streets of his hometown, the weight of memories heavy on his shoulders. The lively dreams that once thrived in his heart had evaporated, consumed by the harsh realities encountered during his deployment. Max trotted beside him, his loyal K9, both a comfort and a reminder of the chaos they had witnessed. Jake had traded commotion for monotony, but the rising unease in his chest choked him. Each familiar corner brought back flashes of combat, the screams, the uncertainty, the ghostly faces of those he'd lost. During his patrol, Jake saw swirling dust across sidewalks and vacant homes. These cracked shells housed families struggling to survive, an ever-present reminder of societal neglect. The community that had raised him now seemed like a distant memory, overshadowed by an unforgiving landscape. An alarming thought raced through his mind: had he fought overseas only to come back to a battlefield in his backyard? Then, as they rounded a dumpster behind an old grocery store, his heart practically stopped. A movement caught his eye, something stirring in the shadows. Max let out a low growl, a sign that instinctively stirred Jake into action. He stepped closer, and as the rags parted, he felt a jolt. There she was, a little girl cocooned in a sack, dirty and trembling. Panic etched across her innocent face, and all he could think was to protect her. The urge burned bright within him as he lifted her into his arms, the warmth of her tiny body contrasting with the cold reality of her situation. In that moment, Jake felt a shift inside him. This girl embodied all the injustices of the world, a personification of the helplessness he'd witnessed everywhere. He had to find her family. But who could he trust? Walking through town, whispers of disdain for families on the brink began to grow louder in his mind. Judgment blanketed neighborhoods as desperation lingered. Was he prepared to confront that? The girl's name was Lily, and she giggled as he shared silly jokes to comfort her, each laugh tugging at Jake's heartstrings, reigniting a flicker of hope he'd buried deep. Yet, amid their fleeting joy lay a chilling realization: her father was serving time for crimes vast and complex, a battle against a system that held no regard for him or Lily. With each step Jake took towards the truth, doubt crept in like an unwelcome shadow. Would the town that once embraced him now turn against him for standing up for what was right? The heavy gaze of a growing resentment began to haunt him in each interaction. Half-hearted greetings morphed into contempt, leaving him to question the love he thought he felt for his hometown. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tension spiraled as Jake stumbled deeper into a labyrinth of truths and lies, confronting ghosts of his past that intermingled with fears for Lily's future. Why had he always felt out of place? Yet here, with her tiny hand clutching his finger, every doubt about his worth exploded. His duty to protect grew monumental. And as whispers surrounded him, he faced a choice: to continue the fight against a cruel system or retreat into the silence of his own despair. Jake stood at a precipice, the weight of expectations crashing down around him, an unavoidable confrontation ahead. Abruptly, a shadow flashed before him, provoking memories of an enemy he had thought vanquished. The question loomed heavily: would he shield Lily and challenge the bitterness of the town, or would past traumas consume him whole, tearing apart the only chance they had left? Dark clouds loomed above, thickening Jake's sense of urgency as he clutched Lily tighter. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping through his fingers like sand. Despite the warmth of her body against him, chills traced their way down his spine. What if the harsh words he'd already endured from the townsfolk were just a prelude to a more profound confrontation? Jake had always prided himself on being a protector, but this time, the stakes felt infinitely steeper. Concealing doubts echoed in his head, demanding to be addressed. Could he really make a difference in Lily's life when shadows from his past loomed large? He inhaled sharply, trying to remind himself of the countless skirmishes he had endured, the many decisions that had forced him to rise against the odds. Each effort to pilot through adversity had led him to this very moment, a moment of clarity amidst the noise. With a renewed sense of determination, he decided to seek out Lily's mother. Any fear of retribution from the town would have to wait. First, he had to provide safety for the girl whose life now intertwined with his own. They made their way through the marketplace, bustling yet indifferent. Couples scurried by, their laughter resonating like a distant melody to Jake. These people didn't see the strife unfolding under the surface. Max led the way, his keen instincts honed from years of training and close companionship with Jake. The dog paused outside a battered old house, its paint peeling like memories. Jake hesitated, his heart pounding in conjunction with the vibration of unyielding hope and crippling anxiety. Could this be where they found a savior for Lily? Taking a cautious step toward the door, images of confrontation danced in his mind, bitter words exchanged, hands pointing blame. The very essence of fear that had shrouded his hometown came flooding back, a gaze from an unforgiving crowd unwilling to show empathy. But the thought of Lily's smile provided a steely resolve. He had faced more daunting foes, and he was not about to shy away now. "Stay behind me," Jake whispered firmly to Lily, his eyes locked on the front door. Max's ears perked up as a slight rustle penetrated the solemn air. Suddenly the door swung open, revealing a woman whose weary eyes mirrored Jake's own battles. Thick lines etched across her brow conveyed years spent in turmoil, yet within them, he detected a flicker of strength. "Who are you?" she questioned, her voice laced with both concern and apprehension. "I need to talk to you about Lily," he stated, the weight of those words grounding him. "She is safe with me, but we need to figure things out." The woman's gaze shifted to Lily, who wrapped her tiny arms around Jake's leg and peered up at her mother with a mix of love and trepidation. It occurred to Jake that trust was not easily given, it had to be earned through raw honesty. The corners of the woman's mouth twitched as she fought a wave of emotion. Did she even believe him? Jake had come to know that the hardest battles are often fought in silent confrontations, where every emotion hangs heavy in the air, weighty and necessary to confront. "I can't provide you with any assurances, but these are trying times," she said, folding her arms tightly. "If you promise to help, we can fight this together." A surge of adrenaline coursed through him. What he didn't know about himself was suddenly becoming glaringly evident. He was not merely a soldier, he was a catalyst for change, a protector not only on the battlefield overseas but right here, at home. "Then let us get started," he replied, his voice steady. Just as he felt a flicker of hope igniting within him, something cold and ominous crept back into his mind. The shadow of an unseen adversary loomed. He now had more than societal judgment to endure, he had a genuine battle ahead. They needed to confront those forces that threatened their fragile peace. The time had come to face the truth lurking beneath the surface, hiding in plain sight. What would be revealed, and how much was he willing to sacrifice? Jake stepped inside the dimly lit room, the atmosphere thick with unresolved tension. The walls, painted a faded blue, seemed to absorb the weight of unspoken fears. As he took a deep breath, he noticed Lily still clinging to his leg, her small form providing an unexpected strength. Here, in this fragile moment, he wasn't just a soldier, he was becoming something more significant, a lifeline. "Can we sit?" he asked the woman, who hesitated but eventually nodded. They moved to a shabby couch, its fabric worn and faded. Jake could feel the unvoiced worries coursing through the air like a current. "Thank you for bringing her back," she murmured, her gaze dropping to the floor. "But there are things you need to know." Her voice trembled slightly, betraying a deep well of emotion. Jake sensed it was time to confront the vulnerabilities they all shared, to face the fear head-on that had brought him to this moment. "What are we up against?" he prompted, his tone firm yet inviting. She raised her eyes, revealing a flicker of resilience amid the sorrow. There are people in this town who aren't safe. They think they own the streets, and I know they're coming for us. Lily deserves better. The reality struck Jake like a blow to the chest. This wasn't merely about one child's safety, it was about systemic fear controlling the lives of those around him. His instincts as a protector surged forth, igniting something within him that had been dormant. "And what about you?" he asked. "Where do you stand in all this?" She sighed, folding her hands as if shielding herself from the thoughts that threatened to spill over. "I've been fighting for too long. Sometimes it feels like no one hears our cries. It's easier to sink into the shadows." Jake recognized this moment. He had hovered on the brink of despair more times than he wanted to admit. But the difference today was the clarity dawning on him. He refused to let anyone fade into the shadows while he had an ounce of strength to resist. "That's not going to happen with us," Jake asserted sharply, unleashing a wave of determination. "We're not just going to fight, we're going to change the narrative. You and me, we can't continue to hide." Lily blinked up at him, her wide eyes teeming with unfiltered hope. It was contagious and made his resolve swell even further. He was not just a soldier in a physical sense. Each moment he spent here was a destination on a journey toward redefining who he was meant to be. "As long as we stand together, I promise to help you fight," Jake continued, solidifying his commitment. "But you must trust that I can lead us through." With a firm nod, her demeanor changed. She had started to break from her self-imposed constraints. "All right, let's make a plan. I know how they work, and I have connections that can offer us some intelligence." Jake felt a rush of adrenaline shoot through him. This was the chance to embrace his role as a defender, to support and empower not just Lily but her mother too. He would not falter, he would dig deep within himself, push past the flickering doubts, and channel that energy into negotiation, strategy, and resolve. As they began sketching out a plan to confront their opponents, Jake felt electricity surging through his veins. Here, in this huddled moment, he was not merely managing a crisis, he was evolving, drawing on resources he had not yet recognized as his own. But just as clarity emerged from chaos, a sudden loud bang echoed from outside, as if the universe itself was pushing back against their newfound alliance. Jake's heart raced, his instincts sharpening to a razor's edge. "What was that?" he asked, eyes widening as fear began to take hold again. He exchanged a glance with the woman and knew they had reached a crucial point. The real battle was about to unfold, and its outcome could reshape everything. "We need to act now," he said, a sense of urgency taking over. But what awaited them outside? Would they rise to the challenge, or had they provoked forces stronger than they anticipated? The moment of truth was upon them. The echoing bang pulled Jake from the momentum he'd just built. His pulse quickened as adrenaline flooded his system, pushing aside the plans he'd just begun to devise. "What was that?" he repeated, more sharply this time, channeling the urgency flooding through him. He stood up abruptly, shaking off the remnants of uncertainty that lingered like smoke in the air. Lily, still at his side, looked up at him, a mix of fear and trust etched across her delicate features. Jake knelt down, taking her small hands in his bigger, calloused ones. "Stay close. You hear me? No matter what happens, you stay with me. I'll protect you." The woman Lily's mother remained silent, a flicker of indecision crossing her face. There was something haunting about her eyes, as if they were both pleading for help and yet fearful of the outcomes. Jake turned, shaking off his doubts. This was a defining moment, a crucible of sorts. He couldn't let fear dictate their actions. We can't let them dictate our lives. We can either sit here and wait for them to come, or we can take the initiative. He sensed her hesitation but pressed on. "Do you know where they might strike next? If they're coming, we need to be ready, armed with more than just panic." She nodded slowly, and Jake felt a small surge of hope. "There's a warehouse on the east side of town. I've heard things." Her voice trailed off. What kind of things? Jake implored, the urgency of the situation amplifying his tone. We need details. They're planning something. A shipment of drugs, maybe weapons. I overheard them talking they're running this town as if it's theirs. And if they find me, she pressed her lips together, the weight of their reality crashing down around them. He needed to transform this static moment into a decision. Then we have to act before they ever know we're onto them. We can't let this go unchallenged. Jake felt a clarity settle over him, a resolve solidifying in his chest. It wasn't just about protecting Lily anymore, it was about standing against the tide of fear that had drowned so many. Let us prepare, he said softly but firmly. Gather what you know. We'll need a plan, one that keeps Lily safe and drives them back into the shadows. As she nodded, a flicker of determination sparked in her gaze, and Jake could feel the tide shifting. He had only recently been trapped by his own uncertainties, but now he saw the path ahead. It was not just one determined soldier standing against the tide, it was 3 individuals forging a new alliance. They spent the next few minutes piecing together what intelligence they had, but every second felt like an eternity, each loud sound outside amplifying their preparation anxiously. Jake paced the room, envisioning every step they would take. Suddenly, another bang echoed, this time accompanied by the distant sound of shouting. Jake froze. The world outside was shifting, and they had to move fast. Time to go, he stated decisively, realizing that this was no longer just a fight for survival, it was about taking control of their destinies. Jake led the way to the door, heart pounding not with fear, but with the embrace of newfound purpose. As they stepped outside, he turned back to Lily and her mother. Stay close to me. No matter what happens, I promise you won't face this alone. But as they stepped into the dim light, the shadows beyond shifted unsettlingly. The atmosphere thickened, a sensation creeping up Jake's spine. They were no longer simply a soldier and 2 civilians, they were participants in a high-stakes game against unseen forces, the outcome of which could forever alter their lives. Jake realized they were now near the precipice of confrontation. A deliberate choice lay before them: what would define them most, fear or resolve? With the sounds of turmoil surrounding them, he took a breath that felt more like a declaration than an intake of air. Let us find the truth, he murmured, knowing it was time to uncover the dangers they faced. The confrontation was imminent, and he was about to find out just how deep the shadows ran and what it would cost him to bring light back to this town. But would this revelation lead to liberation or deeper entanglement? Jake could only brace himself for what lay ahead, facing a dawning horizon filled with uncertainty. The tension crackled in the air as they stepped out into the gloom. Moments stretched and compressed, blurring the edges of Jake's thoughts. Outside, the chaos outshouted his racing heart, shouting voices mingled with the interlaced sounds of metal clashing against metal. It was confrontational, aggressive, and Jake felt the adrenaline surging through his veins. Stay right behind me, Jake commanded, voice firm as he led the way into the night, navigating through the shadows. With each step they took, Jake became acutely aware of the stakes involved. It wasn't just his life, it was Lily's, her mother's, and potentially countless others counting on their resolve. He realized he was no longer simply a soldier acting on instinct, he was becoming a leader. This budding sense of purpose forged a new, steely determination within him. Lily's mother, finally breaking her silence, whispered, "We should head to the warehouse you mentioned. They could be caught off guard." Jake nodded, mindful that each decision etched his path forward. "We need to scout it first. We can't afford to make any rash moves." He scanned their surroundings, his instincts finely tuned to discern any lurking watchmen or threats. An ambush could spring from the dark corners of alleyways, and he had to be vigilant. As they neared the warehouse, Jake felt the heaviness of his own choices. Each prospect illuminated a question: what if they were overpowered? Jake halted, kneeling behind a dumpster littered with debris, grounding himself in the moment. "Listen, we need to be ready. If we get caught, we can't panic. Every decision we make here will either save us or seal our fate. Both women nodded, the solemnity of the situation settling over them. Jake felt for the first time that he was no longer just acting on survival instincts. Decisions brimmed with purpose, awakening in him an unexpected leadership quality he never knew he possessed. "Keep your eyes peeled, and try to stay quiet," he instructed, as they edged closer. Somewhere in the distance, Jake spotted the silhouette of the warehouse, its walls worn with time yet pulsing with ominous potential. Inside, sounds echoed, muffled and indistinct. Jake leaned closer, ears straining to capture any whispers of conversations that might unveil the plans brewing amidst the chaos. He sensed the tension among his companions, a shared anxiety and burgeoning strength coiling them together. "Do you hear that?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper, hardly concealing her excitement mingled with fear. "Focus. Every detail matters," Jake replied, mentally fortifying himself against the current of anxiety that threatened to ripple through him. Suddenly, a rogue thought flickered in his mind: what if he could not protect them in the way he promised? That lingering doubt raced through his heart, but he shook it off. He was not giving in to despair. A collective intake of breath released between them as they spotted a flickering lantern illuminating part of the warehouse interior. Shadows crawled along the walls, and Jake felt the creeping dread in his gut tighten, urging him to act. "Are we ready for this?" he asked, half turning to the women. It was a pivotal moment. He needed to know they were committed to the potential risks they faced. The gravity settled over them, every heartbeat resonating in Jake's mind like the pulse of a drum. Lily's mother met his gaze, her resolve intensifying. "We are ready," she affirmed, voices tinged with an unspoken defiance. Jake allowed a spark of determination to ignite within him at those words, his fears momentarily quelled. "Then we go in. Let us uncover the truth and protect our future." As he pushed forward into the warehouse, a sense of clarity surged through him, a dawning realization that the responsibility rested squarely on his shoulders. This moment wasn't merely about survival. It was about transforming fear into resolve and taking back control. A noise reverberated behind them, and the oppressive weight of uncertainty crashed over him once more. Had they been followed? In the depths of the warehouse, Jake knew they would soon face the looming antagonists who had orchestrated the turmoil. Would his newfound purpose endure the test? Would the moment serve as a catalyst for change, or would it plunge them deeper into chaos? Painful revelations lay ahead, but he would question nothing until he confronted the enemy face to face. The time had come to pay the price for clarity, and he could only brace himself as they pushed deeper into the shadows, searching for the light. The stale air enveloped them as Jake stepped cautiously through the warehouse door, his senses heightened by the dim flicker of light that danced across the walls. Every step echoed in the silence, a resonating heartbeat against the chaos echoing from outside. He felt the moment stretch, filling with weighty anticipation, the gravity of each decision sinking deeper within him. Jake wasn't merely walking into a conflict, he was stepping into a crucible designed to refine his character. "Stay close," he murmured, scanning the room for any sign of movement. The space was a labyrinth of shadows and doubt, and he could almost hear the tension radiating from Lily and her mother. The thrill of vulnerability hovered thickly. It was a potent reminder of the stakes. Jake's instincts screamed for caution, yet the growing leader within him urged action. As they crept deeper into the warehouse, muffled voices floated through the darkness. Jake stopped, pressing his back against the cool, rough surface of the wall. He needed to gather the kind of information that would shape their approach, but with each moment spent listening, uncertainty gnawed at his resolve. What if he miscalculated? What if his leadership faltered? "Do you think they're armed?" Lily's mother whispered, and Jake could hear the quiver in her voice. Her fear reflected in his own mind, a mirror of doubt flashing amidst growing determination. The prospect of retreat pushed him to reassess their position. "There's only one way to find out," he replied, though the words felt like an empty promise. Could he truly lead them to safety? Each decision seemed to hold more weight than the last. Sounds of laughter erupted from a nearby room, followed by the sharp crack of metal. Adrenaline ignited within him, and he could feel the fatal consequences of hesitating snaking through his mind. "We need a plan," he whispered, acutely aware of the responsibility that had been thrust upon him. "Let us divide our focus." Jake realized that he had an unexpected talent for strategizing on the fly, honed from years of experience. It was time to put that to use. "I'll draw their attention while you two find a way around," he suggested, internalizing a new layer of his identity, no longer a soldier, but a commander who needed to protect his charge. "What if they catch you?" Lily countered, fear evident in her wide-eyed expression. "I can handle it," he asserted, his voice steady despite the tightening in his gut. A surge of confidence accompanied his words, the weight of fear lessening as clarity emerged. He was stepping into uncharted territory, but with that came the chance to define who he could be. A moment of silence to inhale the potential hung heavily in the air. Jake turned his gaze toward the doorway where the voices emerged. Did he believe in his strategy? Could he trust his ability to adapt to the incoming chaos? "Count to 3 before you move," he instructed firmly, cueing his thoughts precisely for execution. Each second counted, every heartbeat stoked the fire of his determination to act. As he prepared to execute his plan, the inner voice of doubt that had whispered before was dimmed, eclipsed by the resolve forging a new path. "Ready?" Jake asked, adrenaline coursing through his veins, igniting the passions of leadership. As the count echoed in his mind, time warped, the elegance of urgency merged with the anticipation of action. He felt on the brink of something transformative, but as he stepped out from his hiding spot, a firm voice called behind him one he hadn't expected. "Jake! Wait!" He turned, heart racing and lucid clarity shedding light on that one pivotal moment. Was it the instinct of survival or the fear of responsibility unraveling once more? Would he find himself trapped in the cycle he was trying to escape? Would either path hold the answers he desperately sought? The choice loomed overhead like a storm waiting to break. In that instance, everything was left hanging in the balance. Jake turned back, confusion swirling in his mind. Time seemed suspended, each tick of the clock amplifying the stakes that hung in the air. The gravitational pull of leadership tugged at him with a fierce urgency. He needed to know who called his name, to gauge the risk of diverting his attention from the chaos looming ahead. "Lily?" he asked almost instinctively, his voice a mixture of concern and confusion. She was the one who had warned him, but this felt different, more direct. "Please, we can't leave you." Her voice cut through the haze of his thoughts, igniting a flicker of panic within him. How far had they come only to teeter on the brink of failure? Was he being reckless, or had he been made for this moment? "No time. You have to trust me," he replied, locking eyes with her. He saw fear meld with determination, an echo of the struggle playing out in his own heart. He turned back toward the doorway, where shadows began to shift ominously, and every instinct urged him forward. The laughter from within swelled, an unsavory reminder of the imminent threat they faced. But how could he lead them when he felt himself teetering on the edge of indecision? "Jake!" The urgency in Lily's voice broke through his resolve once again. She rushed forward, her expression pleading, her need for assurance palpable. "You can't do this alone. We need to stick together." In that moment, Jake found himself wrestling with the very essence of leadership. What did it mean to protect? Was he fulfilling that responsibility by putting himself at risk? Or was he inadvertently opening the door to failure? His inner conflict twisted like a knife. Did he trust himself enough to shield them both, or had he become a liability? The tension in the air was thick, and clarity rang like an alarm bell. Jake inhaled sharply, then allowed his mind to pivot. He would take a step back before diving into chaos. "Okay, we'll do this together. But we have to be fast," he said, his tone victorious as it marked the shift in his mindset, the move from isolation to collaboration. Lily nodded, taking a hesitant step beside him. Her mother joined them, a trio fortified against the impending storm. The thought of facing the unknown together felt strangely liberating. He had ignited something in himself, a realization that leadership wasn't simply about making decisions alone but facilitating a united front. On 3, Jake reiterated, a sense of strategy enveloping him once more. 1-2 each count seemed to fuel his resolve. He could feel the mantle of responsibility settling on his shoulders, but it no longer felt heavy, rather, it felt like a pact forged in fire. 3. They surged forward in a synchronized wave, an unexpected burst of energy and ambition propelling them onward into the heart of the darkness. As they swept past the doorway, Jake caught glimpses of the figures inside. They were distracted, but danger simmered beneath the laughter, ready to boil over. Every creak beneath their feet sent jolts of adrenaline racing through him. He knew they were on borrowed time. In that scuffle for survival, he sensed his potential expanding, shaping itself into a beacon of hope. But would they find safety before time ran out? Would they emerge unscathed, evolving into something more than they had been moments before? As they navigated the maze of crates and shadows, Jake's instincts sharpened. He sensed a shift in the atmosphere, the laughter soured, and he heard a decisive voice cutting through the haze, one he recognized. "Now, let us see who's been listening." The chilling proclamation rang out, and with it came the weight of confrontation. Jake's heart raced as he braced himself, not just for battle, but for the crucial test that lay ahead. Would he rise to meet it? Would the leader within him flourish, or would he falter under the weight of expectation and fear? The answer loomed just beyond the shadows. The atmosphere thickened as Jake sprinted forward, heart pounding in rhythm with his footsteps. The fleeting moments of anticipation weighed heavily on him. Shadows elongated and twisted, transforming the familiar into an alien battleground. Each step brought him closer to not just physical confrontation but the pivotal intersection of his innate potential and the pressures of unforeseen responsibility. "Stay close, and keep quiet," he ordered, honing in on the task at hand. The urgency in Lily's gaze pushed him forward. Yet, Jake could feel his resolve flickering. Just a week ago, he doubted his place, burdened by uncertainty over his leadership abilities. Now, he faced what felt like a test of everything he had struggled to grasp. Peer pressure mingled with the primal instinct for survival as they drifted deeper into the dim light. With every passing second, Jake wrestled with the cacophony of self-doubt that rang in his ears. What if he led them into danger? Was this collective approach truly going to work, or would it unravel their fragile hope? He caught Lily's eye, a silent conversation telling him she sought reassurance, confirmation that this plan had merit. And yet he found himself standing at the precipice of crisis, as that familiar question bubbled up, clawing for dominance. Was he really equipped to lead anyone? "Jake, we have to move." Lily's insistence broke through his spiral, igniting a spark of determination. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, he refocused. This wasn't just about managing fear, it was about leveraging their strengths as a unit. He realized that effective leadership was less about having all the answers and more about creating an environment where ideas could flow, where decisions could be made collectively. "Together, remember?" He turned to her, trying to channel that energy into something productive. The sense of purpose sparked within him, and in that moment, he began to identify roles. "Let's check those crates." Instinctively, Lily and her mother fell in sync with his directives, scanning for any potential tools or resources that could offer them an edge. John, one of the bystanders from earlier, scurried up beside him, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and energized hope. The collective tension morphed into palpable action. Jake felt the tide beginning to turn within him. As they rummaged through the crates, Jake's fingers brushed against a heavy metal object, some kind of crowbar. Gripping it tightly, he recognized a flick of something deep inside, an innate ability to remain calm under pressure, to strategize amidst chaos. The steel felt reassuring in his grasp as empowerment coursed through him. Perhaps this was his talent, connecting people, galvanizing them around a common goal, uniting disparate threads under a single purpose. "Let's check the doors," he commanded with newfound authority. Outwardly, he lit the path forward for the group, but internally he was battling lingering trepidation. The laughter from the other side echoed like a storm warning, growing louder, threatening to engulf them in the darkness. Their next move would be everything. Embracing the weight of vulnerability, Jake prepared for the confrontation that loomed imminent. Focusing on the raw strength of unity, he inhaled deeply, layering courage over doubt, an act of defiance against his fears. They approached the next doorway, silent in their shared anticipation. With a shared glance that mirrored a vow of solidarity, they positioned themselves, ready to face whatever lay beyond. The air crackled, a potent mix of adrenaline and dread igniting the moment. But just as Jake pulled the door open, the laughter ceased. All that remained was the stark realization that they were no longer invisible. There was no turning back. "Now, let us see who has been listening." The voice echoed through their consciousness, freezing them in place. In that moment, Jake wasn't just leading a group, he was confronting his own limitations. Would they be viewed as a threat or be dismissed as targets? The stakes had never felt higher. With the edge of fear trailing behind him, he summoned every ounce of tenacity. They were about to face the unknown together, and for the first time, he could feel the formidable leader within him ready to emerge from the shadows. He was not merely surviving, he was set to carve a path through adversity. The key question loomed larger than ever: who else would step forward when the moment called for decisive action? The silence that followed the ominous voice was laden with tension, a stark reminder of the stakes Jake had just internalized. Instinctively, he gripped the crowbar tighter, feeling the cool metal press against his clammy palm. His pulse raced, the echo of laughter morphing into a deeply unsettling soundtrack that heightened his senses. They were about to cross an unseen threshold, and the unexpected gravity of leadership bore down on him like a storm cloud. "Jake," Lily whispered, her voice trembling as she shifted closer for comfort. The reality of their predicament began to seep in, and he could see her fight against the doubt that, much like him, threatened to consume her. This was the moment he had feared, yet although anxiety tightened in his chest, he recognized a flicker of something else: resolve. "Whatever happens, we stay together," he replied, each word a mantra meant to ground them in unity. He realized that it was this shared purpose that had sparked the leader within him. The urgency to protect had transformed doubt into determination. As he pushed the door fully open, Jake's heart surged not just from fear, but from a surge of responsibility. They were faced with a dimly lit room, shadowy figures dancing with the flicker of weak overhead lights, distorted faces suggesting both threat and potential allies. He steeled himself against the unknown, aware that every decision now mattered. "We need to assess the situation," he murmured, his eyes scanning for the best positioning. The act of making a plan ignited a sense of purpose. He was no longer just a bystander swept along by fate. He began strategizing, piecing together the strengths of each person around him. "Lily, keep your mother back. John, you take point with me." The subtle yet firm authority in his voice surprised even him. Here he was, 3 days prior lost to indecision, and now he was guiding others. The fact felt surreal. He was maneuvering not just to keep them safe, but also to encourage their capabilities. "Wait." John's voice sprung forth as he spotted movement ahead. A figure drew closer, its face obscured. In that fleeting moment, Jake was overwhelmed with the fear of failure, not just of letting himself down, but of failing those who had rallied around him. Unlike the shadows, he had to be a beacon and anchor solid enough to withstand the tremors of chaos. "Keep calm," he instructed firmly, his voice louder now, realizing that the more composed he was, the more confidence it instilled in the group. This wasn't just about courage, it was about demonstrating strength through vulnerability. The figure emerged, revealing a startlingly young girl, terrified eyes wide and searching. A shot of instinct jolted through Jake as he knelt, reaching out in a gesture of calm. There was a profound realization vibrating through him. This was no longer about facing down a threat, this was about safeguarding hope. "Hey, we're here to help," he said softly, pushing aside the trepidation to focus on the girl's needs. He noticed her ragged clothes, hair matted with dirt, and an instinct bubbled within him fiercely. This wasn't merely an encounter but a catalyst for personal growth. In that pivotal moment, Jake understood that true leadership meant extending oneself beyond the pressure of the group's expectations. It was about recognizing human connection, wanting to uplift those who appeared lost. The more he focused on the girl, the more he felt doubts about his own capabilities fading. Would he lead them away from the shadows, or would they be consumed by uncertainty? As the warmth of determination spread through him, he repeated the words again, not just to the girl but to himself. "We're here to help." With the weight of impending decisions bearing down on him, he felt clarity return, an irresistible urge to protect, to thrive, and the steady realization that perhaps he had indeed found a piece of himself in this precarious dance of fate. But as he took a bold step towards the child, another noise reverberated from the shadows, a chilling reminder that their fight was far from over. The path wasn't merely a stepping stone toward safety, it had turned into an urgent quest for salvation. What they faced next could define not just their survival, but who they would ultimately become. Jake emerged from the warehouse, heart pulsating with both fear and determination. The confrontation loomed large, yet for the first time, he felt a sense of empowerment grounded in purpose. Within him surged the realization that he was no longer just fighting his own battles. As he stepped into the fading light, Lily and her mother flanked him, their fragile hope fortified by an unspoken bond of trust. "Stay close," he instructed, his voice steady. Rounds of laughter and hasty movements echoed in the distance, growing closer with every beat of his heart. Clarity surrounded him, the need to protect was stronger than any anxiety that lingered. As they made their way toward the exit, he glanced back at Lily, her small fingers intertwined with her mother's. This moment was transformative. Nearly a week ago, he had felt disconnected from his purpose, haunted by the past. Now, he had a responsibility that transcended fear. He was their shield, their leader. Emerging into the open, the evening air prickled, laden with tension. The once familiar streets held a daunting weight, as dark silhouettes lurked in the corners. Would courage or chaos guide them? He inhaled, re-establishing the resolve that had soured his doubts. "Jake!" A voice called from afar, and before he could process the urgency, a figure rushed toward them. It was John, his friend from the market. Jake felt a bubble of hope ignite within him. Allies were essential to conquering adversity. "Are you okay?" John panted, eyes darting between Jake and the two women. "I heard the noise. What's going on?" "There's deeper trouble here. We need to rally our forces," Jake replied, his impressive confidence growing. The cognitive shift within him had evolved. He was a protector, not just a soldier but a voice of leadership. "Let us figure this out together." The warehouse, it had people. "We need to gather as many as we can who will listen," John shared, the urgency palpable. "We can lure them out, draw attention away from the innocent." It was a strategy born of instinct, a tangible response to a chaotic world. They did not just run from danger, they faced it head-on. "We need to inform the police too, we can't navigate this alone." The weight of leadership settled heavier on Jake's shoulders. His plans had shifted, but fear had transformed into a steely resolve, one that focused on teamwork, trust, and bravery. Together, they bridged the divide of uncertainty. They strategized quickly, Jake snapping into a leadership role he had not only accepted but welcomed. "I'll initiate the distraction," he said firmly. "John, you take Lily and her mother to the safe zone. We can't risk losing anyone." "Are you sure?" John hesitated, concern shadowing his features. "I have to do this," Jake vowed, igniting the fire of purpose within himself. He had witnessed enough pain and struggle, he was ready to fight back against the darkness. He understood the fight was about protecting the vulnerable, and in that realization, he found the ultimate reward of courage, selflessness. With John nodding in earnest acknowledgement, Jake stepped away into the encroaching shadows, the dread around him reframed into determination. He gathered his thoughts. Every moment spent wandering through despair had honed him into the protector he was destined to be. Today, he would prove it. As he darted toward the main thoroughfare, the cool night chilled his resolve but ignited his spirit. He had cast aside doubts, embracing leadership not for acclaim but to safeguard those in need. Not just Lily and her mother, everyone capable of being swallowed by the tide of fear. The clang of metal sliced through the air, and a group of figures materialized from the warehouse, their intentions menacingly cloaked in darkness. The chaotic undertone heightened as they categorized Jake, veering closer. A flicker of anxiety nudged its way back, yet, with it, a sense of strength emerged, the knowledge that he was not alone. Allies awaited his signal. "Hey!" he shouted, voice booming like thunder, disrupting their unsettling camaraderie. "You want a fight? Let us lead." 1. This wasn't a mere call, it was a challenge fueled by conviction. Caught off guard, the figures paused, surprised by the resolve emanating from him. He felt the energy rippling around him. The essential transformation he had undergone was palpable, unyielding against the gathering shadows. Every ounce of confidence surged as he faced them. "I won't allow you to torpedo this town any longer. We're taking control." The charged atmosphere crackled as the men exchanged glances, trying to process this unexpected shift. In the depths of adversity lay the opportunity for personal growth, transcending from a soldier defined solely by past scars to a leader capable of instigating change. He stood his ground, embodying strength, purpose, and an unwavering commitment to forge pathways toward hope. And as darkness hovered around him, Jake mirrored that very strength. The echoes of past battles reverberated in his bones, each memory urging him forward. Leadership sewed together the fabric of survival, and he wouldn't falter. With Lily, her mother, and John by his side, he realized he was part of a larger narrative, a collective struggle for justice against the precipice of despair. The fight had just begun. Now, more than ever, it was time to claim what belonged to them, not just for survival but for reclaiming dignity in the face of desolation. As the figures shifted, undeterred by their collective courage, the moment crystallized into clarity. Jake embodied the spirit of the American dream, not just to survive against the odds but to thrive. This was the pinnacle of his journey, where fulfilling his purpose meant weaving together threads of courage, community, and conviction. Unforeseen challenges awaited, yet he stood resolutely at the forefront, surrounded by allies ready for battle. Together, they would rise, unapologetically challenging the shadows, determined to illuminate the truth that lay waiting beyond the darkness. So here we stand, ready for transformation, ready for victory. Don't miss what's next. You need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive emotional stories that challenge the spirit and redefine connection. Leave a like now to help us feed the algorithm. Every click makes a difference. I want to hear from you. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible journey. And remember, this is the moment to share this video with at least 5 friends who need a dose of inspiration. Don't wait even one more second. Ignite their spirits today.